What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, Sony did share their most recent financial report for Q1 of this fiscal year, where they talked about PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 sales, as well as PS5 supplies going through the rest of this year. And we're going to go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a system that popped up on eBay for a couple of hours before it was ripped down, and you may recognize this developer kit from last year. And we're also going to be talking about some new details that have surfaced online around Sony's next PlayStation VR headset. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below and ring that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the uploads here on the channel. And we're going to start today with Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. This game's coming out October 5th, and people seem pretty excited for it. I think mostly because it is tapping into that nostalgia with Super Monkey Ball on the GameCube. And I mean, those were really fun games, so it'll be a lot of fun going back through it here in a couple months. But it does look like they're going to have some new additions, which includes Beat from Jet Set Radio, or if you were like me and you played it on the Dreamcast when it released here, Jet Grind Radio. Although you did have Jet Set Radio Future on the Xbox. Anyway, here's the trailer, and yes, Beat is going to be a playable character in Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania. But here's the weird thing. I was looking at the description, and it says Beat's going to be a playable character who's free and unlockable on all platforms through normal gameplay at launch. That seems weird. We'll have to double check with Sega to make sure that's not like a typo or something, because it kind of sounds like. Anyway, people were really excited to see Beat appear and show up, and it's like, hey, it's gonna be Super Monkey Ball. And that made me really happy, because it means that maybe Jet Set Radio could make a return, could make a comeback, and people would actually pay attention to it. I wasn't sure if there was still a market that would exist for a new Jet Set Radio game, but the fact that people reacted this strongly to Beat just being in Super Monkey Ball does give me hope that maybe Sega will test the waters with a remaster or a remake, or maybe a brand new one. Either way, though, make sure you check out Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania coming out October 5th, because you can play as Beat. Also, we do have Gamescom coming up here in a few weeks, and we now have the announcement for when their opening night live stream will be. We can see this from Jeff Keighley over on Twitter, where he says 3 weeks from today, get a new look at this holiday's biggest upcoming video games and what lies beyond. Gamescom opening night live, a live 2-hour showcase, streaming and co-streaming everywhere, Wednesday, August 25th, that being 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And these Gamescom live streams, I've learned now to keep the expectations pretty low for these ones. I mean, remember one year, the big announcement there that everyone really remembers is that Sony bought Insomniac, and that wasn't even part of the show. It got put out there while the show was going on, and Jeff kind of read his phone and was like, hey, Insomniac's now part of Sony. Anyway, let's take a look at this game. And like, they didn't have any big time announcements there at Gamescom, but it's still fun because, you know, we'll still see some new games. It's a show to look forward to, and I'm sure have some crazy and wild predictions over, but my suggestion is going with low expectations, and if you're surprised, great. But look forward to this in a couple of weeks. Oh, and for any of you Mass Effect fans out there who were really happy about the Mass Effect Legendary Edition that released, I have some good news. It looks like EA was very happy with the release as well. We can see this over on Windows Central, where they say there were no sales numbers for Mass Effect Legendary Edition, though per the earnings call accompanying the financial results, the game reignited fan enthusiasm for the franchise and performed well above expectations. And some people on Twitter who had listened in on the call said that they really emphasized well above and enthusiasm. So I'm kind of looking at this and saying, okay, Mass Effect did run into some issues with Andromeda. That really did hurt the series. A series that, I mean, was just rolling. It was sky high with Mass Effect 2. That game, when it came out, phenomenal. Still awesome to play now, but like the hype back then when Mass Effect 2 dropped and just how good that game was leading up to Mass Effect 3. Massive expectations. Kind of disappointed for people, but Andromeda really hurt the series. So I'm happy to see that enthusiasm, according to EA, is back, because that does make them, I'm sure, step back a bit and say, okay, let's make sure this next Mass Effect game is really good no matter what. It's got to stay in development for longer and cost more, fine, because I would like to see Mass Effect make that grand return with a new entry in the series. So here's hoping they can pull it off. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony's report for this most recent quarter to start off their fiscal year. This would have been from April to June, and they had quite a bit to talk about here. First, though, let's start with the numbers, which we can see over on ResetAir. There was a really good post that was made with a ton of charts comparing data all over the place, but we'll start here. This was from Arm Gunner, so shout out to them with Quarter one, over $5.62 billion in revenue, $0.76 billion in profit. But this was the biggest quarter one revenue ever for PlayStation and for any platform holder, which, I mean, that's massive there for Sony. The hardware, the PS5 sold 2.3 million units. That brings its lifetime up to 10.1 million. And the PS4 in at 500,000 units, that bringing its lifetime to 116.4 million. I do wonder if it's going to be able to reach 120 million, as it's pretty clear it's slowing down here drastically. It's going to come down to if Sony continues to ship enough PS4s as we go along. I guess the one thing here is we know like God of War and Gran Turismo, they're going to be on the PS4, so maybe Sony will be inclined to continue shipping them, although they've said they really want people to move over to the PS5 quickly. So maybe they do start to cut that PS4 number down even more as we go along. And while we're on the topic of hardware through the first 3 quarters, we can see this chart here from Arm Gunner that does compare all these different systems ranging from the PS2 at the bottom, which I will point out the PS2, remember when it first released, that was just in Japan. So we know how the PS2 turned out when it was all said and done there, but all the way up to the PS4 there at 10.4 million, and the PS5 right behind it in terms of shipments, but the PS5 is actually ahead of the PS4 in terms of sold through consoles. So from what I gather, the PS5 is in higher demand right now than the PS4 was in its first 3 quarters. It's just Sony trying to produce enough units to meet demand. Now, unfortunately, it wasn't all good news, as there were numbers released around PlayStation Plus as well as software, which we can see there are 46.3 million PlayStation Plus subscribers as of June 30th, 2021. That's up 1.3 million from the 45 million subscribers during the same period the previous fiscal year. There seemed to be disappointment around that number, and I guess just because it wasn't like a massive amount of growth for PlayStation Plus subscribers. But then we take a look at software. PS5 and PS4 software combined sold 63.6 million units in the 4th quarter of fiscal year 2020, which is down 27.8 million from the 91.4 million software sold during the same period the previous fiscal year. 10.5 million units were first-party titles, which is down 8.2 million from to the 18.7 million sold during the same period the previous fiscal year. Now, if you remember, we had talked about this previously. A lot of these bigger game companies, publishers, and all this, they're kind of warning investors specifically, hey, last year, kind of a strange year for us. Like, a lot of people were inside, whether it was through lockdown or just trying to stay away from everyone, and they turned to different forms of media for entertainment, movies, TV, or video games. People who really hadn't been playing a lot of games or making like a lot of purchases with gaming all of a sudden started to, just to find something to do, and that resulted in a fairly large spike in terms of consumer spend last year compared to now, where people are going outside more and doing other things outside of gaming. So yeah, we're seeing more of a decline, and that's mostly across the board, and it's very much expected. So I wouldn't be too concerned about these numbers kind of trending down a bit or almost remaining flat for PlayStation Plus year over year. We'll see how things go as we roll through this fiscal year, but there is the question, of course, around the PS5 and if Sony's going to be able to make enough of these systems as they go through this fiscal year towards the holiday and then into next year ending in March. Because remember, they're looking to produce an additional 14.8 million PlayStation 5 systems during this fiscal year. Well, it looks like they're pretty confident that they will be able to do that. We can head over to VGC where they transcribed part of the conference call. This from CFO Hiroki Totoki saying the shortage of semiconductors has impacts in various areas and through various measures. We have been taking some action. For PS5, the target has been set for the number of units to be sold this year, and we have secured the number of chips that is necessary to achieve that. Regarding the supply of semiconductors, we are not concerned. So this is good news because getting to that 14.8 million by the end of March 2022 means they'd be around a little over 22 million, which would put them just ahead of that PS4 pace. And that's the biggest thing here. Remember, in business, you're always compared to your last year, or for gaming, your last generation. Are you able to outpace the PlayStation 4 with the PS5? If there was no issue around supply, yeah, I don't think that'd be a problem at all, but that's the biggest thing they're running into. Now, the fact that they have secured the parts necessary, the chips, as they say, to create these systems is good, because let's say more chips become available as they go along throughout the year outside of what they've already secured, they most likely could beat that 14.8 million, and that would really help them getting this generation started and rolling along and getting more people over to the PS5. It's hard to get people from the PS4 to the PS5 if you're having a hard time just providing the system. But from what they've shown here in their first quarter report, so far so good starting out the fiscal year. We'll see how things go as they roll towards the holidays and the eventual holiday spike in terms of sales. Next up, let's talk about an eBay listing that appeared online yesterday, and it was gone after a couple of hours, and you'll probably know why when you see what it was exactly. Take a look at this tweet here. This is from Zuby Tech. A PS5 development kit, DFI D1000AA, was for sale today on eBay for a few hours. There are 4 images here, I guess, taken from that eBay advertisement, that listing, and we'll get some nice zoomed in shots here because, I mean, this is the best, I would say, look that we've had at this PlayStation 5 development kit. Remember, we saw all kinds of artist renderings of it and the, the center part glowing blue and lighting up the whole room and all this, but this is, like I said, the best look we've had from like a real world perspective of this kit. And what's funny about this is it appeared that the bids were already getting out of control in just a few hours. 12 bids of over $3,000. And I can promise you, it wasn't me. I didn't bid on this, but that would be an interesting tech wave, I will admit. But there's one problem there, and that's that Sony obviously doesn't want dev kits sold on eBay for a system they've had out for 3 quarters now. That's not gonna help them in the long run, because if you get a dev kit like that, and let's say you're more interested in trying to open up the system when it comes to hacking it or soft modding or any of that, I have a feeling the dev kit would help you some, and that's probably why the bids were jumping so heavily. Being able to find one of these out in the wild when Sony was so protective around this system, the point where if someone took a picture, you were in some serious trouble as a studio. Yeah, that's gonna get quite a bit of money on something like eBay here, as we saw those bids continue to climb rapidly before I'm sure Sony stepped in and said, nah, you're not selling that. In fact, we need to know who you are and where you got this from in the first place, and our lawyers will be in touch. But that did make me think a little bit, because development kits do pop up on eBay quite often, older ones. Like I think the PS3 comes up, the Xbox 360, and a few others. I do wonder if people would like to see maybe a tech wave where we actually tear apart a development kit and talk about it some. So let me know if that's something you'd be interested in seeing. Next up, let's talk about Sony and their next big PlayStation VR headset, because they showed off the controllers one day, just like on PlayStation Blog, and then they said, okay, we'll see you next year when we'll talk more about the headset itself. So we're still a ways out from finding out more about the device overall and how it's going to work. But it does appear that Sony held a private conference with investors talking more in depth about some of the features and even specifications around this headset. We can head over here. This was on Upload VR, and it was initially reported from PSVR Without Parole and was corroborated here by Upload VR, where they say at the event the company outlined specs and features for the new device, which has not yet been given an official name, which Upload VR previously revealed. That includes the resolution of 4,000 by 2040 pixels, that being 2,000 by 2040 per eye. It will also have eye tracking support for foveated rendering, which is a pretty cool technique to kind of cut down on the overall strain of the system itself and having an issue when it comes to frame rate. The idea there is it will render certain parts of the scene more than others based on where you're looking, because the eye itself can only really focus on a small portion of the screen when it's that close to your face, and that will make it so we don't have as many performance issues with something that really needs a higher refresh rate and frame rate for it to be an enjoyable experience. Some of the other details included a code name, which was NG-VR, I guess just next generation VR, uses an HDR OLED display and has a field of view of 110 degrees, that being 10 more degrees than the original PSVR. And apparently the headset could also use a technique called flexible scaling resolution to further increase the performance of PSVR titles. And while we're on the topic of games, the other part of the report mentions several big AAA experiences that they're trying to work VR into, more or less being optional mode. So think of how we had Resident Evil 7, and that had the PSVR mode that was very well done. Have that more or less ready for launch for more games as they go along, and that makes sense, as PlayStation VR, I think was very successful for Sony, especially if you compare it to other VR headsets in the field. It certainly sold way more than pretty much anything else. Although I do think we're going towards like these headsets not having to be attached to anything and just being all in one like we see with the Quest. And that's where I'd like to see Sony get to eventually, but it does sound like it's still going to be hooking up to the PS5 and using that to kind of drive the experience along. Maybe someday we'll have just an all-in-one headset from Sony. Either way, though, it does sound like a lot of technology is going into this, and the biggest question now is going to be, obviously, the price. Are we going to be paying more for this headset and these controllers than the PS5 system itself? That's what a lot of consumers are going to be wondering, of course, when we finally get this reveal. But at least it sounds like the experience is going to be pretty good, so I guess we'll be looking forward to 2022 to find out more from Sony. And in our last bit of news, let's touch on this abandoned thing again, just very quickly, because this has turned into a whole thing, hasn't it? Now it's like Silent Hill or it's Metal Gear, it's Kojima behind the scenes pulling the strings. Well, now it looks like some screenshots of this abandoned game or the experience just found their way online. We can see this over on Twitter. This from Joe Miller saying, leaked images from Blue Box Game Studios' mysterious game. Supposedly someone has managed to extract them from Hassan Karaman's profile on PlayStation Network. And we can see some zoomed in shots of it here. I mean, the texture work on the wall looks good. I guess we have a little frame rate counter at the top there in the 50s. All right. And then, well, we do have Hassan Karaman responding, saying, well, the 2019 version was a lot different back then, but it was a test of the PS4's max power. It was running on PS4 Pro with native 3840 by 2160 resolution targeting 60 FPS with 8K textures. It did work, but the PS4 version wasn't powerful enough to create a full game. We just need to get to August 10th, right? That's when the experience is going to go live, and I have a feeling it's still not going to answer any questions. Like, this, to me, is really shaping up to be this big marketing campaign right now, probably for an indie studio's game that, for some reason, Sony is running this experience test through, and maybe they'll use it for their bigger games next year with, like, Horizon and God of War and Gran Turismo and all these different games, and they'll have it so you don't have to watch it through a YouTube video, the compression. Maybe you can use the DualSense controller. I would like this to be something else. Like, it'd be cool if it was Silent Hill or Metal Gear Solid and it really was just this massive marketing campaign that Kojima was running the whole time. But the more I see here, the more I really do think it is just a small independent studio, and we're to the point now where people are pulling screenshots out of this person's PlayStation profile of walls. So I don't know. Here's hoping we get more answers on August 10th, but something's telling me we won't. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, which Switch title left for 2021 are you most looking forward to? We have Metroid Dread, 52%. Good job, everyone, as it should be. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl at 20%. Shin Megami Tensei 5 at 13%. Mario Party Superstars, 10%. No More Heroes 3, 5%. And the odds of Sean having to play through Balan Wonderworld and post a review on his channel, 100%. I'm glad to see that Metroid Dread is like the most hyped up game and anticipated game on the Switch this year. Even though it's a 2D style game that people have wondered if the pricing is correct. We'll find out more as we get closer to it. We find out how long the game is and how much content and all of that. But just the idea that a 2D Metroid game is this big deal right now in 2021, it's pretty cool to see. And hey, it's going to be fun seeing a bit more about Balan Wonderworld when Sean tells us all about it next year. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Uni saying, doesn't even have to be GTA 5. Just give us San Andreas and it'll sell like crazy. That's the most shocking part to me is, all right, GTA 5, maybe there were issues in development. They're like, well, it's not going to run exactly how we want with Grand Theft Auto Online. We'll just pass on it for now. Why aren't you bringing Vice City or San Andreas over? Like they've had some of those older Grand Theft Auto games working on mobile phones, like older mobile phones, not even like newer ones. So it seems weird that they haven't ported that to the Switch. I mean, we have people in the homebrew community porting things like San Andreas to the Vita. To me, it seems obvious that Rockstar could move San Andreas to the Switch and make like a massive amount of money, but they haven't for some reason. So maybe that is what we're working towards. Maybe a remastered collection of Grand Theft Auto on the Switch. I think that'd be awesome. You know, I would pick that one up. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. There's Sony's financial report for the PS4, the PS5, and their supply going through the rest of this year. I think it's gonna get easier to find a PS5 by this time next year. Let me know about that one. And then also, what about the PlayStation VR 2? Are you excited to hear more about this with some of these reports now starting to surface around a pretty good headset when it comes to the technology inside of it? And then What about this abandoned thing? We're seeing screenshots now appear online. Do you think we're gonna get answers on August 10th? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.